Okay, so to continue with the story and kind of recap. So basically, yeah, my dad messed up my shot. He's telling me to shoot the wrong way. I'm picking the ball off the rack, which is making me shoot the wrong way. And then my dad's trying to fix it. He's telling me to do the wrong thing. So, but I feel like, my dad's always helped me. And I feel like I need my dad to help me. And because when I was the best shooter in the country, I was unconscious. But I always did what was right because I would automatically just align to it because my dad would give me passes and I just shoot. But now that my shot's messed up, because since I was always unconscious, I didn't know how I shot before. I didn't know how to fix it. And my dad was the one who was always, if there was ever any problem, he would tell me. Let's say my feet were too wide. Let's say something like that. He would tell me. He would fix it. He'd say, Ryan, your feet are shooting too wide or below arc. So I felt like I needed my dad. But now that my shot was actually messed up and I'm practicing wrong, picking the ball off the rack, my dad's telling me to do the wrong thing, I still feel like I need my dad because I don't know how to fix my shot because he always helped me my whole life. But he messed up my shot. So now it's just a tragic, futile situation. So I'm in the backyard, I'm shooting, picking the ball off the rack, shooting wrong. My dad's upset. You're shooting square. We're getting in arguments, or he's arguing. He's right. You're shooting square, and I'm just trying to shoot. I'm still trying to not think, but because I'm picking the ball off the rack, it's making me shoot wrong. And then my dad's like, "Well, just do this. Just spin and do it. Dribble and spin." No, he told me to do the exact wrong thing. So then it led to conflict. So then my grandpa comes in. Like I said, my grandpa comes in from Kauai. He never lived with us. He never knew me growing up. I met him a few times, and he's like, "Oh, this is just completely natural. What Ryan wants is independence. Ryan just wants to be independent. This is what happens to a lot of kids in high school. A lot of kids in high school, they just, they start to rebel against their dads because they want independence." That's what he thought because he came and he didn't know what the fuck was going on. He didn't know shit. And again, like I said, he's an existential metapsychiatrist, and all they care about is independence. And his whole thing was, he was against welfare. He was an Ayn Rand fan, and he was into the idea of give welfare, and it makes people independent. It makes people dependent, and what's the best thing for people is to be a part of the synergy of the universe and to work, and to be a part of the anti-entropic reordering function of the universe, and that's a part of the flow. And so working is important and being independent is important. And he doesn't like welfare because welfare enables people and it makes them lazy, and lazy is not the flow, and because it's self-confirmatory and there is no self. And so he comes in and he any chance he can get, he wants to make people independent and he wants to impose his ideas. And that's ironic thing because he's always like, I never impose anything. You only give questions. You only give answers once someone asks a question. And he admits that he came in and he imposed his ideas. He would later admit that, and I'll get to that. But he comes in and he's like, what Ryan really wants, he just wants independence. This is completely natural. This happens all the time to kids in high school. I'm not a normal kid. This wasn't a natural thing. I wasn't going through a teenage rebellion. The problem was my dad messed up my shot. We're trying to fix it. But my grandpa comes in and he tries to simplify it. And he tries to, like I said, he's a hammer and he sees everything as a nail. He sees everything as make everybody independent. No welfare. He's like obsessed with that shit. He was a big Ayn Rand fan. When I went to visit him in Kauai, I remember he was reading an Ayn Rand book. And Ayn Rand's all about no communism, be independent. So my grandpa comes in, he's like, oh, what Ryan really wants is independence. Let's make Ryan independent. And my mom and dad misinterpret it. And they're like, oh, okay, independent. Okay, get him out of our lives. So they sent me to psychologists because I'm like, I talked about this in previous, and I'm not going to go into all the details of what happened, but we ended up going to one psychologist, and I'm talking to the psychologist, and I'm telling the psychologist, like what happened was, like I said, my dad became capricious. If I had a good game, and he looked in the newspaper, and I made 4 3-pointers against O.J. Mayo, he would go to the next game, and he would start shooting at me in the backyard. But then if I started playing bad, my dad would stop. And my grandpa would later try to blame the victim, be like, well, it's because when you were playing good, you were nice, and that made your dad happy, and he would go to your games. But when you played bad, you were upset, and that made your dad upset, and he stopped going to your games. Everything my grandpa always did, I always saw as white supremacy, victim blaming, fascist, Nazi. That's the way I always saw it. So I saw him as victim blaming, just like everything was my fault. It's always the victim's fault. But it was more complex than that. But my grandpa came in, and he was always on my dad's side. So he's like, but anyways, I wanted my dad to shoot with me, and I wanted to be not capricious. So I just told the psychologist, can we just set up a thing where once a week for 15 minutes, my dad can shoot with me and he can look at my shot just because I just need to know. Because my dad would just tell me, your shot, and I didn't know. He's like, your shot looks terrible, but I didn't know because, like I said, I was always unconscious, so I didn't know what a terrible shot looked like. I was in the dark. And my dad was the one, like, people would think that I was the one who was like, I'm shooting bad. I had no idea I was shooting bad. My dad was the one who was telling me, you're shooting terrible. It looks horrible. I didn't even know. I just was shooting. My whole life, I never knew how I shot. I just shot. The problem was the shoot away machine. And my dad telling me to do the wrong thing after the shoot away machine messed up my shot. So I just tell the psychologist, can we just set up something, like set up just a system where I shoot once a week with my dad for 15 minutes, just so he can look at my shot, tell me if it's looking bad, make little adjustments, just so my shot doesn't look terrible, you know? But then my dad was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. And then, so my grandpa's there, and my grandpa was like, well, Ryan, you know, everything is just fine. That's what you have to trust, you know, faith. You know, because my grandpa's an existential med psychiatrist, and existential med psychiatry is like Christianity mixed with Buddhism, you know. It's like, and I always saw it as white supremacy, because I always saw spirituality as white supremacy in a way to like blame the victim and maintain the status quo and all that. And a part of that is just like, just accept everything. So he's like, Ryan, just accept it. You have to accept everything is just fine. You know, if your dad makes a bad call and he decides to do what he wants to do, and if you perceive it as a bad call, you just have to accept it. You have to learn to accept and to trust and to be in the flow and not make things happen. Your dad doesn't decided that he's not gonna, you know, he's gonna be capricious and he's gonna decide when he wants to shoot with you or not. Well, you just have to accept that. You might think it's a bad call, Ryan, but you have to accept it. You have to realize everything is just fine and just have trust. So I'm like, so that's what he's doing. But like I said, I always saw it as white supremacy, maintain the status quo, because it's like, okay, people can abuse you all you want. People, you know, you could be in an abusive situation, and you just have to accept it. Just trust, just accept it. And now this made me even more into a Marxist. My whole life I was an anti-white Marxist, but then my grandpa, and in my mind I was always like, my grandpa's a white guy. This is why he's a Nazi, white supremacist, because, you know, he's gravitated toward that ideology, and this is what attracted to him. And you know, and I hated my grandpa, and I was like, but at the same time, I would listen to my grandpa, because I'd be like, there is some profound stuff to what my grandpa's saying. So I would listen to him, but at the same time, I'm like, he's not helping me. But so then my mom is like, so then, you know, then I'm continuing to shoot with my dad. My dad gets angry. Oh, your shot looks terrible. Oh, he goes inside. Dad, I need your help. My mom, then my dad starts beating me up, and my mom's like, Ryan, everything's just fine. You have to accept it. Your dad doesn't want to shoot with you. You have to accept it. Everything is just fine. It's because that's what my grandpa's saying. You know, you have to accept everything is just fine, Ryan. Everything is just fine. So then my mom and dad are like, okay, well, the only way that we're going to let Ryan stay with us is if he goes to a psychiatrist, because my mom was like, so they take me to a psychiatrist, and my mom tells the psychiatrist, Ryan has obsessive compulsive disorder. He doesn't just accept no for an answer. He doesn't accept no for an answer. If his dad says he doesn't want to shoot with him, he doesn't accept it. But that's not what was going on. What was going on was much more complex than that. What was going on was my dad messed up my shot. If my dad didn't mess up my shot, none of this would have happened. But I didn't know my dad messed up my shot. I didn't know the shoot away was a problem. So it was a futile situation, a tragic situation. I'm picking the ball off the rack, shooting wrong. It's making me shoot wrong. And my dad's frustrated. He's yelling at me. And I'm frustrated because I don't even know what's wrong. I don't know that my shot's bad. My dad's the one who's giving me this information. So I'm like, well, then help me. And he's like, I give up. And it was a very complex situation. It wasn't obsessive compulsive disorder. My mom's a fucking idiot. So my mom's like, tell the psychiatrist, he has obsessive compulsive disorder, and so he needs to get medicine, and we're not going to let him live with us unless he starts taking medicine. But my grandpa's there, and I remember my grandpa was talking to the psychiatrist. My grandpa was like, the psychiatrist was looking at my grandpa like my grandpa was an idiot. He was like, this guy's fucking crazy. My grandpa's like, well, Ryan's like, he's like an airplane, and an airplane needs to be in higher consciousness, and blah, 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 blah. And he's like giving all these metaphors. He thinks he's Jesus. My grandpa thinks he's Jesus, and he's like giving parables. Like, Ryan's like he's talking to the psychiatrist. I remember the psychiatrist was looking at him like, whoa, this guy's fucking crazy. And my grandpa's like, Ryan's like a Jaguar, and the Jaguar needs, you know, he's like a high quality sports vehicle, and he needs the highest quality engine fuel, and that's the highest level of consciousness, and blah, 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 blah. And then I'm like, oh, fuck, dude. And then the psychiatrist is like, this is weird. And then my mom's like, well, yeah, Ryan just has obsessive compulsive disorder, and he won't take no for an answer. And he, you know, and that was another thing. So then the psychiatrist is like, okay. And then he gave me like Prozac or something. And then, but then, like I said, that didn't help, because we go back to my house, and me and my dad are shooting. Same thing. My dad's like, what's wrong with you? When he would pass to me, like I said, I think when he would pass me, I would start shooting better because I'm moving into shots naturally. And like I said, I don't think. So I'm just moving into shots naturally. But then I go back to shooting and picking up off the rack. My dad's like, oh, you're shooting square. What the hell? It's because I'm picking up off the rack. And it makes my feet shoot wrong. I know that now, but at the time I didn't know that. So, and also then my dad's like, well, then shoot like this. And he's telling me to do the wrong thing. So then it's a futile. It was futile. It's tragic. It was tragic. So then there's more fights. And then my dad would go, I give up. And I'd come home from school and I'd be like, Dad, let's shoot. And he'd be like, no, it's no use. You fucking suck. It's no use. And I'd be like, Dad, come on, I need your help. And then my grandpa would be there. My grandpa would be like, Ryan, you have to accept his calls. Everything is just fine. My mom would be like, yeah, Ryan, everything's just fine. You have to accept his calls. But I felt like I needed my dad because my shot was messed up. I didn't know that my dad was the one who messed it up. But I was still picking the ball off the rack. It was futile. So long as I was picking the ball off the rack, my shot was going to be messed up. But I didn't know that. So I'm like, Dad, I need your help, man. And then my grandpa's like, Ryan, you have to learn to take no for an answer. You have to accept his calls. You can't make things happen. You can't always get your way. So they're making me into a bad guy. Like, I just want to get my way. And my mom's like, yeah, he just wants to get his way. He has a problem. He has a mental problem. It's obsessive compulsive disorder. He needs to get his way. And everything's just fine, Ryan. And then my dad would be like, Ryan, ask me again. I'm going to kick your ass. And then my dad would get up and he'd beat me up. So and then I was kicked out of the house again, living with my grandpa. Then I ended up living with my friend Afam. And I'm calling my mom, like, Mom, can I please come home? I felt like I needed my dad's help because at this time, my shot is still messed up. My mom's like, no, you can't make things happen, Ryan. You can't force things. Your dad doesn't want to see you. You can't make it happen. You're not allowed to back in our place. So I'm living with Afam. And at that point, like I said, by that point, my family hated me. So this is the background of me discovering the theory of everything. So keep this in mind. Before I discovered the theory of everything, my family hates me. Then I go into college. I'll get into the next part of the story.